The air was thick with tension as the headlines broke. WeWork's IPO was dead. One by one, major investors pulled out, and Wall Street recoiled from the chaos. In mere days, a company once valued at $47 billion had become toxic. Adam Neumann, the eccentric visionary at its helm, was suddenly cast as a villain in the public eye. His charm, once magnetic, was now seen as reckless delusion. "He's out," one investor whispered over the phone. The board's made its decision. In corporate boardrooms across New York, disbelief turned into anger, then into silence. Thousands of employees sat stunned in stylish offices, their stock options crumbling into dust. As reality set in, the dream of redefining work collapsed under its own weight. Panic swept across floors designed to inspire community. The unicorn was no longer galloping, it was gasping. And as the media descended like vultures, Adam boarded a private jet for a quiet escape. The world watched a modern empire implode not with a bang, but with a blink. And it all happened so fast. Before the world saw Adam Neumann as a caricature of hubris, he was a man obsessed with vision. He believed work could be sacred, that office space could unite humanity. Adam said, "We're not just renting desks, we're building a movement." Investors bought in. His charm disarmed billionaires. His confidence bulldozed boardrooms. Adam wasn't pitching real estate. He was selling transformation. He promised to elevate the world's consciousness through shared spaces. His words were lofty. His eyes sparkled with messianic fervor. But beneath the charisma was chaos brewing. Employees whispered about contradictions. Investors ignored red flags for fear of missing out. Everyone wanted to believe. And so they did. Until the dream began to fray. WeWork was never just a startup. It was a revolution wrapped in recycled wood and kombucha taps. Its branding spoke to millennials yearning for meaning. Every corner had mood lighting and startup slogans. "Do what you love," the walls screamed. And love it they did. At least for a while. There were yoga sessions, beer kegs, and rooftop talks about consciousness. It felt spiritual. It felt infinite. But behind the free, cold brew was a business bleeding money. 1.6 billion lost in a single year. And yet, the parties grew louder. It was a cult of optimism. The burn rate was brushed aside like dust off an artisan concrete countertop. Inside those glass-walled temples, no one dared question the profit. From the outside, WeWork was unstoppable. Office openings in Shanghai, São Paulo, and San Francisco, everywhere, all at once. Valuation doubled every 6 months. Masayoshi, son of SoftBank, handed Adam $4.4 billion after a 12-minute pitch. No spreadsheets. Just vision. "Go faster," Masa said. "Be crazier." Adam obeyed. Jets were chartered. Mansions were bought. A wave of irrational expansion swept across continents. Teams scrambled to retrofit buildings they barely had leases for. And through it all, Adam promised more. Schools, apartments, even a wave pool empire. But cracks formed. Burnout rose. Liquidity dropped. And still, they pressed forward. By the time the IPO filing was public, the fairy tale was cracking. The S1 document read more like a manifesto than a financial disclosure. Phrases like elevate consciousness confused analysts. Conflicts of interest were baked into the structure. Adam owned buildings leased by WeWork. His wife had naming rights for his successor. The narrative was unraveling, not with scandalous leaks, but with the truth staring investors in the face. The emperor had no financials. And the world gasped. Before the chaos and collapse, there was only an idea, and a man who refused to let go of it. In the early 2000s, Adam Neumann was a broke Israeli immigrant, sleeping on a friend's couch in Brooklyn. He sold baby clothes with knee pads. It flopped. But he spoke like a prophet even then. He said, "The way people work is broken." His voice carried conviction that didn't match his bank account. When he met Miguel McKelvey, A tall, soft-spoken architect raised in a commune, a spark ignited. They dreamed of building not just shared workspaces, but shared lives. Out of the ashes of a failed concept called Green Desk, the seed of WeWork was planted. The idea was simple. Take boring offices and make them feel alive. Throw in exposed brick, cold brew, and couches that screamed cool. It was bold, weird, and magnetic. And it worked. The dream was contagious. And in the heart of Soho, two idealists launched a revolution. With nothing but borrowed money, charisma, and a mission. Green Desk was their first experiment, eco-friendly co-working in Brooklyn. It wasn't glamorous, but it buzzed with energy. People loved it. But Adam wanted more. He wanted freedom from landlords, from limits. So he sold his share in Green Desk and walked away, leaving money on the table. Miguel followed. Together, they hunted for their first WeWork location in Manhattan. They found it, a worn-down building on Grand Street. They begged, borrowed, and faked confidence to lease it. Investors said no. Banks laughed. But Adam smiled and said, "You'll regret passing on us." That confidence, delusional to some, was his weapon. When the doors opened in 2010, the place felt electric. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, a barista bar. It wasn't just an office. It was a vibe, a belief. It was WeWork. The early days were scrappy, but electric. Adam walked floor to floor, pitching tenants, shaking hands, offering kombucha. He memorized names. Made people feel chosen. "We're not renting space," he said. "We're creating a tribe." That language hit a nerve in a generation, lost between cubicles and coffee shops. Millennials craved connection. WeWork gave them a home that didn't feel like work. Investors began circling. Venture capitalists liked the vibe, but Adam sold them a vision. "This isn't real estate, it's a tech company," he told them. It wasn't true, but they believed it. His eyes sparkled with conviction. His slides were filled with clouds and consciousness. And the money poured in. Little by little, the dream began to scale. Fast die. The dream morphed into a movement. Adam spoke on stages like a spiritual leader. "We're going to elevate the world's consciousness," he'd shout to thunderous applause. He quoted Gandhi, channeled Steve Jobs, and promised utopia. WeWork wasn't just about office space anymore. It was about purpose. He launched WeLive, a co-living experiment, and WeGrow, a school founded by his wife, Rebecca. The lines between business, philosophy, and fantasy blurred. Employees believed. Investors followed. And Adam? He was flying, literally and figuratively. Private jets, standing ovations, late-night rooftop sermons. He was becoming something more than a CEO. He was becoming a symbol. But symbols, when stretched too far, tend to shatter. Momentum surged. By 2014, WeWork had over 30 locations. By 2017, it was 150. The valuation soared from $1 billion to $20 billion in under 3 years. Each new building was more lavish. Neon signs. DJs at launch parties. At Walmart, Mrs. Katoan. It's Palman. Investors couldn't throw money fast enough. But behind the scenes, the engine was overheating. Expansion came faster than the company could manage. Costs ballooned. Real estate leases outpaced revenue. But Adam waved it off. "Growth is everything," he said. He believed scale would solve all sins. The board looked the other way. The media still painted him as a genius. But every empire built on unchecked belief carries its reckoning. And WeWorks was now on the clock. By 2017, WeWork wasn't just expanding, it was exploding. Every week brought a new headline, new cities, new funding, new ambitions. The press loved it. Magazine covers hailed Adam as the millennial messiah. Conference stages became pulpits. Interviews morphed into sermons. "We're going to change the world," Adam told CNBC. And people believed him. In Times Square, billboards lit up with the WeWork logo like it was the next Apple. Inside the offices, free beer flowed. So did VC cash. Culture became performance. The mission was now a movement. Employees cheered during town halls, as if at rock concerts. Investors begged to join the cap table. It felt like 1999, all over again, hype over fundamentals. And Adam? He stood at the center like a prophet in a hoodie, basking in the glow of his own myth. But hype, once untethered from reality, doesn't float, it inflates. And, eventually, it bursts. In Silicon Valley, boardrooms and New York hedge funds, one name echoed louder than the rest: Masayoshi Son, the billionaire CEO of SoftBank and architect of the 100B Vision Fund. When he met Adam, the two clicked instantly. Masa didn't ask for models, he asked for dreams. Be crazier, he told Adam. Bigger. And with that, SoftBank poured in $4.4 billion, one of the largest startup investments ever made. Adam promised 1,000 buildings in a year. The money was gasoline. Growth went into hyperdrive. Leases were signed in cities no one at HQ had even visited. Employees flew first class. Private jets were booked weekly. The message was clear: think big or go home. But while Masa saw vision, others started seeing delusion. The company rebranded as the We Company. It wasn't just workspace anymore. It was We Live, WebGrow, WebBank, WeSleep. It was a lifestyle, a universe. Employees received manifestos, not memos. Adam declared, "Our valuation is not based on revenue. It's based on energy." That energy built campuses in Shanghai, Berlin, and São Paulo in the same quarter. But that same energy came at a cost. Leases outpaced logic. Floors stood empty. The company was now hemorrhaging money. But, inside headquarters, morale was high. Brand videos featured soaring music, sunrise drone shots, and slow-motion espresso pours. No one talked profits. Only purpose. In the echo chamber, skepticism was drowned out by cheers. And the higher Adam flew, the fewer people dared say no. But behind the glow, things were getting strange. Adam trademarked the word "we," then sold it to his own company for $5.9 million. He bought homes across the country while the company burned billions. One investor murmured, "This feels off." But Adam waved away doubts. He told staff the company would live 300 years. Rebecca Neumann began influencing major decisions, renaming schools and firing staff she said had bad energy. Executives quit. Accountants balked. Still, the money kept coming. The board was complicit, silenced by the dream and the momentum. WeWork became a mirror, reflecting the unchecked egos of Silicon Valley's golden age. And the reflection was starting to crack. Despite mounting losses, Adam pursued the ultimate validation, an IPO. The S-1 filing was meant to crown WeWork as the most valuable startup in the world. Instead, it revealed madness. Related party transactions, unchecked power, staggering losses, bizarre spiritual language. Wall Street blinked. Analysts gasped. "This is not a business," one headline read. The myth unraveled in real time. The valuation plummeted. Adam tried to spin it. He appeared on stage smiling, calling it noise. But it wasn't noise. It was the start of the end. In just a few weeks, the narrative flipped. From visionary to liability. And the hype that built a kingdom became the rope pulling it down. It started with whispers, then exploded into headlines. Analysts dissected the S1 and found red flags. Adam had sold the "woo" trademark to his own company. He took personal loans from WeWork worth hundreds of millions. The image was crumbling. A storm of press scrutiny followed. "This isn't visionary, it's a conflict of interest," one expert told Bloomberg. Employees read headlines in stunned silence. Power scrambled to answer questions. The confidence that once fueled the company was being replaced with cold doubt. Goldman Sachs downgraded the IPO valuation. Meetings turned tense. Lawyers joined Zoom calls. The leadership team, once rock stars, were now suspects. Stock option dreams vanished overnight. The very culture that made WeWork feel magical began to rot from within. And while the world gasped, Adam stayed aloof, smiling on private jets, blind to the shifting tide. The empire, once mythic, was now unraveling in real time. As things worsened, Rebecca Neumann's influence became impossible to ignore. She was no longer behind the scenes. She was reshaping the company's future. She fired people for bad energy. She rewrote company mission statements with spiritual overtones. Employees whispered nervously. Her school, Wegro, was bleeding funds with little accountability. It felt like a cult, one staff member confessed. She hired family members. She made major decisions, often without expertise. Even high-level executives were sidelined. Her role blurred the line between spiritual guru and operational chaos. Adam encouraged it, saying she was his co-founder in life. Investors were now alarmed. Rebecca's influence was seen as unchecked power. But no one dared stop her. They had created a company where charisma outweighed competence. And now, that charisma was becoming corrosive. The tide turned when SoftBank hesitated. Masayoshi Son, once WeWork's biggest backer, was having second thoughts. Behind the scenes, his team saw the numbers and panicked. The math doesn't work, one insider admitted. The flow of billions slowed. The IPO window was closing fast. Adam doubled down on optimism. He spoke at events with the same intensity. But the sparkle was fading. CNBC analysts now questioned his credibility on air. The valuation dropped with every news cycle. Inside HQ, silence replaced cheers. Stock options lost meaning. Executives updated resume quietly. Meanwhile, Adam kept smiling. "We're just getting started," he insisted. But even true believers were losing faith. The trust was broken. The vision was cracking. And for the first time, the dream felt fragile. The board finally acted. In an emergency vote, Adam Neumann was removed as CEO. The visionary, once untouchable, had fallen. He left quietly, with a staggering $1.7 billion exit package. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Thousands of employees lost jobs. Some cried in stairwells. Some packed up silently. "He gets a parachute," one said bitterly. "We get a pink slip." Once vibrant offices fell quiet. The kombucha taps ran dry. The glossy mission statements on the walls now read like bad jokes. WeWork's story had flipped from fantasy to failure. Founders weren't gods anymore. They were mortals who could fall. And Adam's fall was loud, expensive, and televised. After the fall came silence. A new CEO stepped in. Layoffs swept through the company. Projects were slashed. Wegro was shut down. The kombucha taps and neon slogans were replaced by spreadsheets and crisis calls. What was once a revolution became just another corporate recovery effort. "The magic is gone," one employee whispered. WeWork became a punchline. Cautionary tale. What? The startup, once poised to redefine capitalism, now symbolized unchecked ego and delusion. The new leadership tried to rebuild. But the culture had cracked. The spell had broken. And those who had believed in the dream, really believed, were left wondering what it all meant. All that energy, all that hope, reduced to layoffs and a balance sheet. The unicorn had collapsed under its own illusion. In October 2019, the unthinkable became reality. WeWork officially withdrew its IPO. The move signaled death of dreams, of trust, of valuation. Once valued at $47 billion, the company now sat somewhere below $10 billion, bleeding both money and credibility. Wall Street recoiled. Reporters swarmed headquarters. Glass offices that once sparked envy now became backdrops for disgrace. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Desks were cleaned out quietly. Slide decks were shredded. Group chats once filled with memes now went silent. Employees stopped wearing company swag. Some wore all black in quiet protest. The revolution had ended without ceremony. The media moved fast. From unicorn to disaster, read one headline. Another simply called it the fall. What began as a movement to change the world had collapsed under the weight of unchecked ambition, and those who built it were left to clean the mess. SoftBank stepped in like a reluctant firefighter, offering a $9.5 billion bailout to keep WeWork alive. Masayoshi Son called it a mistake, but one he had to own. The Vision Fund's crown jewel had become a liability. A new CEO arrived with spreadsheets instead of slogans. The kombucha taps went dry. Staff perks disappeared overnight. Floors that once hosted DJ nights were now half empty. Analysts described it as a controlled crash. SoftBank took control, slashing costs and canceling leases. Adam was gone, but his ghost lingered in every decision. Lawsuits surfaced. Shareholders demanded blood. Former employees marched outside, holding signs that read, "We believe." Redemption seemed far away. All that remained was crisis management, triage for a broken brand. WeWork wasn't a rocket ship anymore. It was a salvage job. And no one wanted to be the last one holding the torch. What once felt like a movement now resembled a ghost town. No more team chants. No all-hands raves. No more Neumann speeches about elevating consciousness. The company was stripped bare. Only tasks remained, mundane, mechanical. Survivors kept their heads low. Bonuses vanished. Culture turned to cold compliance. Those who had screamed, "We are we," now barely spoke. The startup glitter had faded. Slogans still hung on glass walls, now faded and peeling. Even the cold brew tasted bitter. The brand had once inspired, but now it barely functioned. Desks were rented. Bills were paid. But no one felt proud. What began as a spiritual awakening in startup clothing was now just commercial real estate with branding. And the people who stayed behind knew they were clinging not to belief, but to a job. Adam Neumann vanished from headlines for a while, but redemption stories are seductive. Soon he was back, not in an office but in the press. Rumors spread, new real estate ventures, crypto, even climate projects. "He's doing it again," the press mocked. But Adam smiled, posed on yachts, gave cryptic interviews. "I learned a lot," he said, eyes gleaming. To some, he was the symbol of everything wrong with tech. To others, he was just misunderstood. America has a strange relationship with failure. Sometimes we hate it, sometimes we celebrate it. And Adam? He knew the game. While WeWork clawed its way back to relevance, its former messiah plotted a comeback. Maybe not to change the world, but to stay in it. In startup culture, memory fades fast. And if Adam proved anything, it's that charisma doesn't die easily. By mid-2020, WeWork survived, but it no longer inspired. A SPAC merger took it public. The valuation was a fraction of its peak. The press barely noticed. Former employees didn't cheer. But it was alive. That counted for something. A new leadership team focused on what was left, selling office space. No consciousness. No revolution. Just square footage. For the tech world, it was a turning point. Investors became more cautious. Founders faced more scrutiny. The fairy tale was over. But the lesson remained. Vision, without limits, becomes delusion. Culture without checks breeds collapse. And hype, untethered from truth, always finds gravity. In the end, WeWork didn't change the world. But it did change how the world looks at those who say they will. The empire had fallen, And now came the reckoning. Class action lawsuits stacked higher than pitch decks. Former employees sued for unpaid severance. Investors demanded accountability. State regulators launched probes. Whispers of fraud circled media circuits. The DOJ began informal investigations. Public outrage grew. Adam Neumann's $1.7 billion exit package became a symbol of startup injustice. This isn't just failure, one analyst said. It's systemic rot. Meanwhile, VC firms held private debriefs, desperately trying to distance themselves. Founders across Silicon Valley scrubbed websites, revised mission statements, avoided words like visionary. The world had shifted. Adam had become a cautionary tale. And WeWork wasn't just a fallen company. It was a mirror reflecting how far ambition could go when no one dared to say stop. In cities around the world, WeWork locations still stood, glass monuments to a fallen dream. Some were vibrant, filled with freelancers and startups. Others sat half empty, echoes bouncing off designer walls. The signage remained. But the spirit was gone. The energy, the idealism, the unit. It had all been stripped away. Now, it was desks, leases, and coffee machines. One London tenant said, "I still come here, but it feels hollow." In Shanghai, a WeWork sign flickered at night, while the floors above sat dark. The brand had outlived the myth, but not the meaning. The movement was dead. And for many who once called it home, walking past those walls felt like seeing an old photo, familiar, but faded. Something had been lost, and no one knew how to get it back. Inside what remained of WeWork, life was quieter. No more parties. No rally cries. No visionary speeches. Just work. Just silence. Employees arrived early, left late, eyes tired, dreams grounded. "We're not changing the world anymore," one said. "We're just here." Gone were the slogans. Gone were the stock options. All that remained were to-do lists, spreadsheets, and quarterly reviews. Morale hit bottom. PAR hosted resilience workshops. Few showed up. Where once people wore branded hoodies with pride, now they came in neutral colors, blending into beige walls. Leadership tried to inspire, tried to pivot, but the spell was broken. The charisma had been replaced with compliance, and the echo of what WeWork had once promised still haunted every corridor. Adam Neumann remained untouched by the fallout. No charges, no admissions, no apologies. He reemerged in news cycles, hinting at his next big thing. This time, residential real estate. A new startup. A new mission. "We're redefining community," he said again. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Twitter exploded. Investors rolled their eyes. Yet, some lined up again. "He failed, but he built something massive," one said. "America loves a comeback." And Adam knew that. He posed for new press photos, softer lighting, humbler smile, same vision. But for many, it was déjà vu. Was this resilience or manipulation? Reinvention or repetition? The man who once wanted to elevate consciousness was back, still barefoot, still smiling, still selling something. Some believed him. Others braced for a sequel. By 2021, the world had changed. A pandemic had redefined work. Remote became the norm. Offices were no longer sacred. And WeWork, it limped on. A public listing via SPAC gave it new life, but not new respect. The valuation was a shadow of the past. The movement was gone. But the brand survived. WeWork became just another office provider. No more manifestos. No more mysticism. Just desks and Wi-Fi die. And still, people came. Because even broken things can be useful. The myth had died, but the utility remained. WeWork wasn't a revolution anymore. It was a reminder. A warning. And the beginning of a new era, one less interested in dreams, and more invested in truth. The world still needed places to work, just not places to pretend. Years after its crash, WeWork's story still echoes across the tech world. Founders mention it in hushed tones. Investors reference it in cautionary slide decks. It became a shorthand for unchecked ego, hype-fueled growth, and the danger of believing your own myth. But it also became something else, a moment in time, a fever dream, a mirror. WeWork captured a generation's hunger for meaning at work, for purpose, connection, community. And it gave it back, wrapped in glass walls and kombucha. It promised transcendence through capitalism. That's why it hurt so much when it failed. It wasn't just a company. It was a belief system. And when it cracked, so did something in the people who followed it. That's the legacy, not the billions lost, but the trust broken. Not the fall, but what it revealed. For employees, the legacy was deeply personal. Some rebuilt careers. Others left tech altogether. But many still carried invisible scars, the betrayal, the burnout, the disillusionment. We were missionaries, one said. Then we were expendable. The fall taught them that vision could blind, that charisma could manipulate, and that idealism could be weaponized. Still, not all regretted the journey. For a while, we believed in something, said another. That's rare. The experience reshaped them, hardened them, taught them to ask harder questions. And as they moved on to new startups, new industries, they carried the lessons. Not just about WeWork, but about themselves. That's the human cost of a dream sold too boldly and too soon. For the tech world, WeWork changed the conversation. The days of throwing billions at big personalities began to shift. Governance became sexy. Boards were strengthened. Founders faced more scrutiny. The myth of the messianic CEO faded. Venture capitalists started asking real questions. Pitch decks got leaner. Metrics replaced manifestos. It didn't kill ambition, but it made it more cautious. The crash became a line in the sand. Before WeWork, belief was enough. After WeWork, numbers mattered. Accountability mattered. That legacy, the structural one, was perhaps the most lasting. It forced a maturing of an industry too long addicted to fairy tales. And then there's Adam. Still young, still rich, still dreaming. His next venture promised to fix housing. Then it promised to unify cities. The language changed, but the pattern stayed. Investors circled warily. Some joined. Others warned. Charisma is not strategy, one VC said. Yet Adam's story proved resilience, if not redemption. In some corners of tech, he remained a fascination. A symbol of how far belief can go, and how far it can fall. He said he was misunderstood. Maybe. Or maybe he was exactly what the world created and deserved. His legacy? It's still unfolding. Chapter 2 is being written. But this time, the world is reading more carefully. In the end, WeWork didn't change the world. But it changed the conversation. It exposed the cracks beneath the stories we tell about innovation. It warned us about unchecked power. It showed us what happens when storytelling outpaces substance. Yet, it also showed us what humans crave: belonging, belief, something bigger than a paycheck. That hunger hasn't disappeared. It's just wiser now. More cautious. More critical. But still there. Maybe WeWork wasn't the answer. Maybe it was the question. A bold, flawed, messy question. And the legacy is in how we choose to answer it next time. That's the story. And like all good stories, it doesn't really end.